Good afternoon and welcome to the 2022 Fulton County Law Day event. I am Judge Emily Richardson from the Fulton County Superior Court, and I am thrilled and excited to everyone who is here joining us on YouTube, to the folks who are here in the Fulton County Courthouse with us today. Thank you very much for joining us. After a 2-year hiatus due to the pandemic, we are thrilled to be back together celebrating Law Day. And we are excited about our new format this year, both in person and virtual. This Lunch and Learn, today we have some fantastic speakers from both the bench and the bar. Today you'll be hearing from attorney Patrick Longy on the origins of Law Day, from Superior Court Chief Judge Chris Brasher on the importance of the impartial judiciary, from attorney Ann Brumbaugh on the recent changes to our election laws, and from Superior Court Judge Shakura Ingram on the importance of jury service. We, the committee, wanted to highlight these topics that are so important, not only to the members of the bar, but to all of us as citizens here in Fulton County. I would like to briefly acknowledge and thank the committee that helped organize today's events. Patrick Longy, longstanding Law Day devotee, Magistrate Court Chief Judge Cassandra Kirk, who will be giving closing remarks today. Jatrian Sanders, the president of the Gate City Bar Association, who will be introducing our speakers, and Ann Brumbaugh, who is on the board of the Georgia Association of Women Lawyers. These committee members have jumped in and stepped up, and I really thank them for generously donating their time and their excellent ideas to make today happen. So thank you very much. And therefore, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Sanders to introduce our first speaker. Good afternoon. I will be providing a brief overview of the background for these amazing and incredible speakers. As you will see on the screen, they have accomplished so much, and for that reason, I'm going to have to shorten it down to a brief overview. Our first speaker this afternoon is Patrick Longy. Patrick has worked in private practice as a trial lawyer with the law office in Sandy Springs for the past 35 years. He has been associated with and has worked on Fulton County Law Day for a quarter century. Specifically, he has served as a member of the annual Fulton County Law Week Committee, also known as the Fulton County Law Day Committee, since its inaugural year in 1997. Additionally, Patrick has served as a program chair and lecturer at continuing legal education seminars for almost 3 decades. I present Mr. Patrick Longy.
Thank you. To understand the genesis of Law Day, imagine, if you will, the sound of Russian tanks rumbling down streets and the roar of MiG fighter jets overhead. And what may first come to mind is the brutal prosecution of the war in Ukraine. However, in the 1950s, during the annual May Day parades in Moscow, the Soviet Union put their communist ideology on display through showcasing their military might that same way, which they would use to suppress uprisings for freedom and democracy among subjugated peoples under their rule. The American Bar Association countered May Day in 1957 with a proclamation that May 1st be observed in the United States as Law Day, which was signed into law by President Eisenhower in 1958. Russia today still uses age-old tactics, going back to the czars, that might makes right, as we see each day with the suffering and the bloodshed in its war against Ukraine. However, the greatness of a country is measured not just by its military might, but its wisdom to know when and how to use it. In our free society, we are governed by democratic institutions, the rule of law, and the truth. The truth is the foundation of any great civilization. Veris, veredictum, veredicto, veritas. Veritas was the Roman goddess of truth, portrayed as a young virginal woman symbolizing purity. What were the ancient Romans telling us? There is nothing better than telling the truth. To the Romans, truthfulness was a virtue, what any good Roman should possess. What is truth is what Pontius Pilate had pondered, and veredicto is the foundation of our justice system, being a search for truth. Thus, a verdict is rendered after a trial. Not two verdicts, but one verdict, as there is only one truth. Playing by the rules, fundamental fairness is a theme that runs through our case law, as well as the rules of the playground, as to fair play. What is fair, our parents used to tell us. We grew up to listening to our teachers, coaches, and referees to play by the rules. May the best man win was the saying in the sandbox or the fighting ring. Remember the referee holding up the arms of both the winner and the loser after a boxing match? Now, whether in the courtroom or society at large, if one side plays by the rules and the other doesn't, the rule breaker can not only win unfairly, but erode confidence for others to participate in an unfair system. Why have rules in civil society if people are allowed to break them? Institutions exist to enforce the rule of law with consequences and to monitor themselves. The rules of my profession provide affirmative duties that are charged to lawyers, including duties to improve and advance the legal system, and heed the call to public service to facilitate orderly changes. Duties also exist to uphold the integrity of the legal profession, encourage respect for law in the courts, and avoid even the appearance of professional impropriety, and conduct oneself with integrity in his or her personal or professional life. All professions have a duty and the responsibility in their positions of influence in society to provide leadership. The legal profession is uniquely qualified for this task as the guardian of our constitutional principles, who hold the keys to access the courts for public redress. The question today is, are we up to the challenge in improving our life in the law and what's in our stars? President John F. Kennedy seemed to be talking to us in the future. In speaking at American University in Washington, D.C. on June 10th, 1963, when he said, quote, "But wherever we are, we must all, in our daily lives, live up to the age-old faith that peace and freedom walk together. In too many of our cities today, the peace is not secure because freedom is incomplete. It is the responsibility of the executive branch at all levels of government, local, state, and national, to provide and protect that freedom for all of our citizens, by all means, within our authority. It is the responsibility of the legislative branch at all levels, wherever the authority is not now adequate, to make it adequate. And it is the responsibility of all citizens in all sections of this country to respect the rights of others and respect the law of the land. Unquote. Respect for authority, law, and institutions can coincide with rights to protest, dissent, and appeal, to disagree without being disagreeable. National leaders displaying not only a lack of respect for each other, but utter disdain, extolling any end of political correctness with more freedom to say whatever's on your mind, but at what cost? Ushering in an era of mean-spiritedness and insensitivity to our fellow Americans? If we cannot readily return to a nation invested in its future by thinking of all of us and the common good in our deliberations as to the great issues of our day, we can certainly start the process. What Law Day reminds all of us each year is that our justice system and rule of law safeguard our rich legacy for freedom, virtue, and selfless devotion to others, going back to our founding fathers. In Fulton County, our Law Day dates back now a quarter century, starting with the bench and bar reception in 1997. It has been a work in progress ever since. So please enjoy the rest of our program for 2022.
Our next speaker is the Honorable Chris Brasher, Chief Judge of the Fulton County Superior Court. Judge Brasher, since 2006, has served as a judge in the Superior Court of Fulton County. Prior to his service on the bench, Judge Brasher served as an assistant district attorney in the Alcovey Judicial Circuit, as an assistant attorney general in the Georgia Attorney General's Office, and as a senior assistant attorney general in the Public Safety Section in Georgia's Attorney General's Office. Judge Brasher currently serves as a board member for the North Fulton Bar Association, member of the Atlanta Bar Association, and a member of the Lawyers Club of Atlanta. At this time, I present Chief Judge Brasher.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 2022 Law Day. I'm glad that this program is back on track. As I know you are, glad that so many things are getting back on track. Let's hope and pray that progress continues. As has been alluded to already, our program this year is to talk about the importance of an independent judiciary and its role in ensuring the rule of law. So as I often do whenever I give talks like this, I'm going to talk about my kids because it's one of my favorite topics, to talk about my kids. So I'm going to talk about a story from my daughter's childhood. She's grown and is a school teacher now, but when she was a child, one day we were riding in the car and she kept noticing certain things out the window and she'd ask me lots of questions about them. One of the things that she specifically noticed and asked a question about was, why was I stopping at those red signs on the side of the road? She wasn't really sure because there wasn't anything coming. There wasn't a bar or a gate that made me stop. So she wanted to know, why was I stopping at those signs? And so as fathers, especially fathers who are lawyers, tend to do, I gave her a probably way too complicated answer about the rule of law and about how, if I don't stop, then the policeman might stop me, I might get a ticket. But ultimately, it's just what we have agreed to do as a society. And she looked at me appropriately puzzled. And so I finally said, well, sweetie, if we don't stop at stop signs, bad things will happen. And those bad things could be a lot of different things. But ultimately, bad things will happen if we don't stop at stop signs. And so it is with the rule of law. If we don't have the rule of law, then bad things will happen. The framers of the Constitution knew this when they designed our system of government. When you think about the Constitution that designed our government and ensures freedoms are protected, you'll see that it really is broken down into two sections. One section is the design of how the federal government is put together. And then the other section protects the citizens from the government that was just formed. That's really what the focus of the Constitution is, to establish the government and to protect the citizens from the government that was just established. So the framers of the Constitution knew, because of the history they lived in, that it was critical to have a government that worked, but it was also critical to protect our citizens from overreach by that government. And so when the framers established the three branches of government that we know about, legislative, executive, and judicial, they made them separate and equal branches with authority vested in each that the others do not have. By doing that, they required that those branches would work together, but that one would not rule over the other. They would need to work together in order for things to work well. Specifically, you can see that the way that the judicial branch was created in Article 3 of the Constitution was done with a very specific purpose in mind, and that was to have an independent judiciary. Now, when we talk about an independent judiciary, we're really talking about two things. We're talking about the structural independence. So the judicial branch is a separate branch. It doesn't rely on the executive or legislative branch for its authority. It relies on the Constitution for its authority. But it does rely on the other branches for carrying out of orders, for getting resources, money to run the courts. But it doesn't rely on the other branches for its authority. It gets that authority directly from the Constitution, whether that's the federal Constitution or the Constitution here in Georgia. But most importantly, it establishes an independent judiciary that makes its own decisions, that has its own authority to make decisions. So that's what we call structural independence. But that structural independence is really only a means to an end. And the end is decisional independence. So the reason why that structure is created is so that judges can make independent decisions, so that we can make decisions that are not affected by what's going on in the world. It's not affected by the political branches, the executive or the legislative. It's not affected necessarily by public opinion. It's affected by what the Constitution says and what the law says. And so our job as judges is to follow the law, to do equal justice under the law, and to support and defend the Constitution. Judges don't make law. Judges apply and interpret its meanings in particular circumstances that we call cases. And so when judges sit on a case and listen to what's said by both sides, then they may make decisions about how things should go. Those decisions must be bound in the law and the Constitution. Oftentimes, the courts rely on people, regular citizens, to come and help make decisions. We rely on juries. We rely on the members of the public. And jury service is crucial to an independent judiciary because it is through jury service that we as citizens get to decide what conduct is and is not acceptable in our society. Judges and lawyers, police officers, defense attorneys all make motions and hear matters in court, but no decision in the courthouse is final until the jury says it is. And so jury service is really the most direct way that private citizens participate in government. Again, that's crucial to the independence of the judiciary because the judges, if the judges were only making decisions and telling that to others, that would ring as though it were a king again that was throwing down decisions without any kind of check or balance against them. And that's certainly not the case. Judges make decisions in a lot of cases, but juries make final decisions in many of the matters that come into court. Judges are called upon to exercise judgment and discretion guided by the law. So when we talk about an independent judiciary and the ability of judges to make decisions independently, we're not talking about for the benefit of the judges. We're talking about judges having that independence so that they can make fair and impartial decisions. It's not an end unto itself to be to have that independence. And we're not talking about independence in the same way we talk about freedom, because judges are as bound to the Constitution and to the laws as anyone who takes any oath are. Judges take an oath to uphold and defend the constitutions of Georgia and of the United States. Again, judges must be able to do so free from the pressures and influences and be true to the Constitution. And if they can't, then the courts become beholden to either or both of the other branches of government. The courts will be lost then as guardians of the rule of law and of protectors of the rights guaranteed by the Constitution. I'll give you a quote from a famous judge with a very interesting name, Learned Hand. Learned Hand said about 80 years ago that liberty lies in the hearts of men and women. When it dies there, no constitution, no law, and no court can save it. The same can be said of judicial independence, fairness, and impartiality. And so I go back to the answer that I gave to my daughter, and that is, what happens if we lose an independent, fair, and impartial judicial branch? And the answer is, bad things happen. So thank you very much for the chance to talk with you today, and I hope you all have an enjoyable law day. Thank you.
Our next speaker also serves on Fulton County's Superior Court. The Honorable Shakur Ingram has served as a judge since 2015, beginning on the Magistrate Court of Fulton County and ascending to Superior Court in August 2018 when she was appointed by Governor Nathan Deal. Judge Ingram is past president of the Gate City Bar Association. She also has served as chair of the Atlanta Board of Ethics, on the board of the Author Blank Family Youth YMCA, and currently serves on the board of It's My Birthday Atlanta, Inc. Prior to becoming a judge, Judge Ingram served as an assistant solicitor for the City Court of Atlanta. She then served for 6 years as an assistant district attorney in the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. In 2007, Judge Ingram joined Thomas Kennedy Sampson and Tompkins LLP as a senior litigation attorney. This background as a prosecutor and civil litigator allowed Judge Ingram to gain extensive jury trial experience. I present Judge Ingram. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, J-Tran, for that introduction. I, too, am going to ask you to imagine with me for just a moment. Picture yourself checking your mailbox, as I am sure you do every day. And on this particular day, you receive a white envelope. Perhaps it's one of those three-sided ones with perforated edges. And you wonder if it's some long overdue check and you're about to hit a little payday. You slowly peel off those edges and you open it and you discover that it is a jury summons. You roll your eyes and you start to groan. And you don't want to be summoned for jury duty, and you immediately begin to think, how do I get out of this? I get those calls from friends all the time. They ask me, how do I get out of jury duty? And I get on my soapbox and I give them the same lecture, minus a few parts, that I am about to give you. But in the end, I say, you don't. Please show up and do your part. For many of you, there are 100 reasons why you feel like you don't want to serve. It is the same list of things that we hear from jurors who do show up to serve every day. It will cause missed appointments, missed work meetings, sometimes loss of income,
childcare worries, and it's just always seemed to come at an inconvenient time. But jury duty is an imperative part of the judicial process, and it is a unique experience that allows each of us to contribute in a meaningful way. The impact of jury service on the judicial system, the litigants, and even you personally is immeasurable. Jury service impacts the judicial system because it is the cornerstone of democracy. How, you might ask? We're bringing together 12 or sometimes 6 people to decide issues promotes fairness. The United States has what we call a republic form of government. A republic is a government where the people hold the power, and they exercise that power in many ways, including voting to elect representatives, as you will hear about in just a few moments. But we, the people, also exercise our power by giving ultimate decision-making authority to jurors for trials. The United States has emerged as the home of the jury system for both criminal and civil cases. More than 90% of all jury trials in the world occur in the United States. Prior to the pandemic, each year, on every workday of every week, more than 1.5 million Americans were impaneled as jurors every single day. Jurors impact our judicial system, and it is significant. Jury service also impacts litigants. You showing up to serve ensures that the litigants, the people who are suing each other or sometimes charged with crimes, can exercise their right to a jury of their peers if they so choose. The right to a jury trial, as you have already heard, is a constitutional right, as given to us in the 6th and 7th Amendments of the Constitution. It is a right that courts are obligated to enforce under the rule of law. Jury trials have been in existence since the creation of this country because jury trials were designed to prevent tyranny, oppressive power exerted by the government. Tyranny also exists when absolute power is vested in a single ruler. Our jury trials are the opposite because the citizens on the jury are given the absolute power to decide. Jury service is also impactful to litigants because it allows them to choose a jury of their peers from a cross-section of our community. Jurors come into this building every day to try and resolve issues that people cannot resolve for themselves. They are parents, consumers, young adults, those who have been injured, those who have been wronged, small business owners, corporations, property owners, those charged with crimes, and the list goes on. Whatever category of people that you can think of, they come here and they need you. They need people from our communities who have a unique set of life experiences and diverse perspectives that will listen to their side of the story and make a decision. All litigants are entitled to a jury that they feel is best qualified to resolve their matter. The court system is at its best when citizens show up. So imagine again with me for another moment. It's lunchtime and you have a taste for a deli sandwich. So you head over to a sandwich shop to purchase one. But when you get there, there are only 2 meat options. And you ask the sandwich maker, why only turkey and ham? And she says, well, the butcher only brought those 2 options today. There's no pastrami, no roasted chicken, no roast beef. You wanted to be able to choose from a wide variety, but you cannot because the other meats were a no-show. Well, it's a little similar here. Litigants want people from all walks of life to show up so that they can choose who will be best for their case. When citizens fail to appear for jury duty, the selection pool is diminished. Last but not least, litigants want and deserve all of you, irrespective of your economic status, what part of the county you live in, your sexual orientation, your religion, etc. The diversity of a group of citizens that come together to reach a decision is what makes the American jury trial system the best in the world. Jury service can also have an impact on you personally. First and foremost, it is a legal obligation and it is a civic duty. It is a legal obligation because when you receive a summons for jury duty, it is a court order requiring you to appear. In many jurisdictions, jurors face undesirable consequences if they fail to appear. We also consider it a civic duty because it is one of the most direct ways in which citizens have the right to serve in the government of our community. Almost every juror that I've spoken with following a trial has commented that their service on the jury has impacted how they see our system of justice. When you serve on a jury, you learn about the justice system, how courts operate, and it builds your confidence in our courts. When you go home and you tell your friends and family about your service, you become an ambassador for us. I read once, by obliging men to turn their attention to other affairs than their own, it rubs off that private selfishness which is the rust of our society. So when you get that white envelope in the mail, remember how jury service impacts the judicial system, the litigants, and you. Don't ask yourself, how do I get out of this? You don't. Please show up as instructed and do your best to do your part. Thank you.
Our final speaker this afternoon is Ann Brumbaugh. Ann opened her own firm in Decatur in 2014 after serving as a prosecutor and an assistant attorney general. During her tenure as assistant attorney general between 2005 and 2012, Ann represented the Professional Standards Commission. Additionally, during that tenure, she represented the State Election Board at the Office of State Administrative Hearings and in the Georgia Court of Appeals, the Georgia Supreme Court, and the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Ann sits on the board of the Georgia Association of Women Lawyers and Camp Kazoo, which serves teens and children living with type 1 diabetes. Currently, as a solo practitioner, Ann primarily focuses on education and election law, which is the topic that she will be addressing with you today. At this time, I present Ms. Ann Brumbaugh.
Good afternoon. I'm flattered to be here to speak to everyone about the election. My presentation is going to be a little bit more practical. Election law has changed since November 2020 here in Georgia, and I want to take this opportunity to make sure everybody understands the new rules surrounding voting, so that when you vote next week, the following week, the week after that, or on May 24th, you are as prepared as possible. So the good news is that since 2020, early in-person voting in Georgia has been expanded. In 2020 and the runoff in 2021, you got 3 weeks to vote early in person, and you got one Saturday. Thanks to SB 202, which was passed last year, you continue to have those 3 weeks, Monday to Friday from 9 to 5, but now you have 2 Saturdays to vote. Saturday after the first week of early voting and the Saturday after the second week of early voting. Depending on your county, you may also have 2 Sundays, up to 2 Sundays to vote as well. So when you decide to vote, if you're deciding to vote in person early, check your county website, see where the early voting locations are, what their hours are, whether they offer Sunday voting as well as the Saturday voting. In terms of absentee mail-in voting, that has changed and that has gotten a little bit more difficult. And the most important thing to know is that the last day that you can request an absentee ballot for the May 24th primary is going to be 2 weeks from today, which is May 13th. Back in 2020, you could have requested that absentee ballot until the Friday before the election. So in this case, Friday, May 20th, but SB 202 backed that deadline up by a week. So if you want an absentee ballot, you must request it by May 13th. There are 3 different ways to request the absentee ballot, and then 4 different ways to return the absentee ballot application. You can download it from the Secretary of State's website. You can call the, or you can get it from your, excuse me, there are two different ways. Two different ways. You can request it from the Secretary of State's website, or you can get it from your county website. Additionally, groups may be able to send you an absentee ballot application, but it's not going to be like in 2020. The Secretary of State's office is not going to send everybody an absentee ballot application. The counties are not going to send everybody absentee ballot applications. You are permitted one absentee ballot application. It is marked in the system, and once you get that absentee ballot application, you can't get any others. Once you obtain your absentee ballot application, the identity verification has changed. In 2020, you needed to sign the form. You will still be signing the form, but that signature will not be compared to a signature on file. That will not be how your identity is verified. Your identity will now be verified for most people through your driver's license number. If you don't have a driver's license number and you have a Georgia identification card, you can use that number. If you don't have either of those two numbers, there are other forms of identification that you can cut and paste and affix to your absentee ballot application. And the application itself will give you more specific instructions about which types of ID you can use. Once you have completed your absentee ballot application, you can either take a picture and upload that to the Secretary of State's website. You can mail it back to your county election office. You can hand deliver it back to your county election office, or you can PDF it and email it as an attachment to your county election office. Assuming they receive it by May 13th and everything is correctly filled out, you will then be mailed an absentee ballot. And once again, it will be very similar identity verification, either your driver's license number, your Georgia identification number, in this case, your last 4 digits of your social security, and then again, these other forms of identification. There are 3 ways to return the absentee ballot, and that is an issue that I want to talk about in a little bit more depth. This is not new, but there are only certain people who can return your absentee ballot. The only people who can return your absentee ballot are you, the voter, your family members, anyone who lives with you, or a caregiver if you are physically disabled. You can't give your absentee ballot to your neighbor to mail. You can give your neighbor your tax forms. You can give your neighbor your passport application. But you cannot give your neighbor your absentee ballot to mail. And that is something that people don't know. It's a little bit counterintuitive, and that's why I want to stress that it is very restricted who can return that absentee ballot. One of the reasons it's important that you know this is that with the advent of drop boxes, people are going to be watching those drop boxes in a way that they were not watching them in 2020. In 2020, there were lots of drop boxes available in lots of places, and the security was simply a camera. As of SB 202, the drop boxes are limited to 1 per 100,000 registered voters, not 1 per 100,000 people, but 1 per 100,000 registered voters. They are limited to places where absentee voting is already taking place, and they are only open when absentee voting is taking place, early in-person voting is taking place. So you cannot go take your absentee ballot and drop it off at midnight on a Saturday night the way you might have in 2020. Additionally, there will be a person watching those drop boxes. It will not be a camera. So there will be someone watching the drop boxes. In terms of voting on election day, that is pretty much the same. Precincts are open from 7 to 7. However, we've been through a census and we've been through redistricting, and your precinct may have changed. You should have received a card in the mail, kind of like maybe your jury summons, and you may have thrown it out because, let's face it, we all throw out a lot of mail. So you can go to the Secretary of State's website, you can type in your information, and you can pull up your precinct. So confirm your precinct if you want to vote before election on election day on May 24th. Because unlike in 2020, if you show up at the wrong precinct before 5 p.m., you will have to go to the correct precinct. Back in 2020, if you showed up at the wrong precinct, you were handed a provisional ballot and you were allowed to vote the races you were qualified to vote for. As of SB 202, if you show up at the wrong precinct before 5 p.m., you have to go to the right precinct. If you show up after 5 p.m., then you can vote a provisional ballot. I think that we all know also that there is no longer any food or water that can be given out to people while they're standing in line. So if you think you're going to be in line, bring your own snacks. Counties may provide self-service water stations, but that is all that is permitted. The last thing I want to talk about is runoffs, because it is likely that there will be runoffs in both the Democratic and the Republican primaries this year. When you vote on or before May 24th, you will be able to choose a Democratic ballot, a Republican ballot, or a nonpartisan ballot. If you choose the Democratic ballot or the Republican ballot, you are locked into that for the primary. So you cannot vote a Democratic ballot before May 24th and then go vote in the Republican runoff, and vice versa. We do not register by party affiliation here in Georgia, so you can choose either. But once you choose that party, you need to stick with that party through the runoff. The runoff is going to be on June 21st, which means that the last day to request an absentee ballot for the June 21st runoff will be June 10th. You must have 1 week of early voting, but you are not required to offer more than 1 week of early voting. I suspect most counties will only offer 1 week of early voting. So early in-person voting will begin on June 13th, and it will run that Monday to Friday. Those are the biggest changes. Everybody should still be able to vote, but it may just take a little bit more information, a little bit more checking than what you did in 2020. So please go to your Secretary of State website, type in your information, make sure you know where your precinct is, have your numbers or your photo ID ready for your absentee ballots, and bring your snacks. Happy voting.
Thank you for joining us today. This morning, I was at the Carter Center, engaged in a serious conversation about restoring confidence in American elections. As we celebrate the rule of law and the United States Constitution, that discussion is a beautiful bookend to this afternoon's Law Day TED Talks. Our Law Day theme today is Toward a More Perfect Union, the Constitution in Times of Change. Without question, how we move and grow is up to us. Our Constitution's preamble makes it clear that we, the people of the United States, are tasked to join together and make this union more perfect. Elections are one of the ways our policies, rules, and climate change in America and in Georgia. Having an engaged and informed electorate makes it possible for us to do so. As citizens, we are invited to raise our voices to ensure that the rights and promises of the Constitution, our Bill of Rights, its amendments, are all fulfilled. I hope that this discussion has given you parameters for your advocacy, as well as information that you can use and share with your friends and family. And as your Chief Magistrate Judge, I want you to know that your magistrate court is committed to inform, engage, and empower our community. We always welcome your input. And in closing, I would like to thank my fellow members of the planning team, as well as our Fulton County supporters who are here and the people joining us in person, as well as online. Thank you all and have a great day.